Seeing as video games put you in the shoes of their protagonists, you'd think they would be the ones we sympathise with the most. And yet, although this rule checks out in most cases, there are also plenty of examples of characters who make way more sense in their ways of thinking than the main character. And oddly enough, they usually happen to be the game's baddies. Because I'm Sai for WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 video game villains that were totally right. Number 10, Logan Fable 3. At first glance, Logan, the king and primary antagonist of Fable 3, is written like your stereotypical villain. He's a power-obsessed tyrant who has little regard for human life and will do anything to remain on the throne. However, as you delve deeper into his story and mindset, you begin to understand that his actions are not only justifiable, they might actually make him a better suited ruler than your own pretender character. Although Logan is undeniably cruel, his actions aren't dictated by some perverse desire to cause harm, but rather by a deep obligation towards his kingdom. Everything he does for the sake of his realm. He wants to protect it from the looming threat of the crawler's dark armies and understands that sacrifices have to be made if he's to succeed. The evil actions he commits are why Albion experiences an industrial revolution and why it manages to rapidly expand its army. Even when your character eventually replaces Logan and saves the day, they do so with the resources Logan's sacrifices managed to procure. It's a bitter truth, but Logan's villainy is the only reason you were able to become Albion's hero. Number 9, the Rebels, FTL Faster Than Light. FTL Faster Than Light is a roguelike set in outer space. The player takes on the role of a Federation captain who tries to stop the encroaching fleet of separatist rebels by destroying their flagship. Given their xenophobic and warlike tendencies, the rebels are clearly the game's villains. However, their primary reason for why they decided to go up against the Federation is so valid that it becomes hard to look at your own crew as the heroes either. You see, the rebellion happens because human supremacists within the Federation realise that the organisation is beyond corrupt, and this corruption has caused it to become weak. The events you come across throughout your runs only seem to confirm that. Most events include some sort of extortion option that allows you to prey on the desperate people of the galaxy, and even if you try to play as a good guy, the aliens will still treat you with suspicion and contempt just because you're part of the Federation. But perhaps the most damning evidence of the Federation's faults is the fact that they only sent one tiny ship to take on the entire fleet of armed-to-the-teeth rebels. Yeah, the signs were there from the beginning. Number 8, Big Boss, Metal Gear Solid. Big Boss from the Metal Gear series is the perfect example of a villain who's not right because he secretly tries to accomplish something good, but because he exposes the idea of doing good was doomed from the beginning. The reason why Big Boss is the unequivocal bad guy of the series is because he's the leader of a rogue military group that seeks to plunge the world into endless conflict. This said, his vision of a world where everyone is a soldier fighting for themselves comes from a rather sensible and sympathetic place. As a former member of the US military force, Big Boss experienced the misery of a soldier's life firsthand. From the disgrace of his own mentor to the many injustices against regular combatants, the boss has seen it all and realised war cannot be stopped. But what's worse, the people fighting in it fight only for nations that don't even care about them. Whenever Big Boss is confronted for his crimes, he doesn't try to act like a hero among the fallen soldiers. He simply lets his adversaries know the side they fight for isn't any less bloodthirsty than him, only more heartless. Number 7, Patriarch, Wasteland 3. The story of Wasteland 3 follows a team of Arizona Rangers as they try to secure an alliance with the ruler of Colorado Springs, the Patriarch. The Patriarch is the self-styled saviour of Colorado who protects it from warmongering raiders. As you progress through the story, you discover that the way he accomplishes this is through pretty questionable tactics, like selling people into slavery and making deals with raiders. Naturally, when you realise this, you'll want to get rid of the Patriarch and replace him as leader. However, as the man himself warns you prior to his defeat, that's easier said than done. Before you get rid of him, the Patriarch tells you that keeping Colorado safe requires sacrifices which the Arizona Rangers, with their ties to a different region and an ongoing war, won't be able to make. His words are proven right in most endings in the game. After you replace him, your team will either return to Arizona with resources from Colorado, leaving the liberated region poor and defenseless, or they'll try to provide Colorado with leadership but abandon their fellow Rangers stuck in a hopeless war. Either way, the Patriarch comes out right, and you turn into just another monster. Number 6, Dago, The Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Now, as far as villainy goes, wanting to infect an entire population and then turn it into mindless slaves is pretty bad. And yet, although this is the plan of Dago, the primary antagonist of Morrowind, the reasons for why he commits these atrocities are kind of valid. So what are these reasons? Well, the short answer is to enact revenge on the Tribunal, Dagoth's old companions who betrayed him and went on to become the sole rulers of Morrowind. The long answer is to liberate the Dunmer people from the false and corrupt gods that sow chaos in their lands. The truth is, the Tribunal is as bad, if not worse, than Dagoth. The only reason they are gods is because they murdered their friend and done hero Nerevarine, your player character by the way, and usurped the power of the heart of Lorcan with dangerous artifacts. As you may imagine, someone who kills and betrays their companions does not make for a great leader, and indeed the Tribunal is more like capricious kids playing God than benevolent guardians of Morrowind. Dago may be insane and evil, but at least he's right about the hypocrisy of the so-called good guys. Number 5, Marlene and the Fireflies, The Last of Us. The Last of Us' post-apocalyptic world has a pretty grey sense of morality, which is why you can't easily characterise its characters as good and bad guys. However, because the game is played from Joel's perspective, it's safe to assume the player is supposed to take his side, and if that's the case, then the Fireflies are definitely the villains, even though they're 100% right. The Fireflies, a freedom-fighting organisation spread across the entire US, is what sets off the event of the game. It's their leader, Marlene, who asks Joel to deliver Ellie to their secret compound and allow the two to bond together. However, what Marlene doesn't mention to Joel is that Ellie is immune to cordyceps, and the reason he's supposed to deliver her is that so the Fireflies can sacrifice her to find a cure for the infection. Naturally, because of their shared bond, Joel tries to save Ellie, killing everyone in the compound. His decision is understandable, and yet during the final mission, it's easy to feel betrayed. Yes, no one wants to see Ellie die, but the idea that you've just let Joel sacrifice humanity's one chance at salvation is a hard pill to swallow. Number 4, Haytham Kenway, Assassin's Creed 3. The main overarching story of the Assassin's Creed series follows the conflict between the Templars and the Assassins. The former are usually depicted as cartoonishly evil authoritarian puppet masters, so your assassin character doesn't have to feel guilty about killing them. The rare exception is Haytham Kenway. As the head of the New World Templars and both the father and the son of renowned assassins, Haytham offers a unique perspective on the Templar-Assassin conflict that shows his order from a different, more objective perspective, while simultaneously exposing the flaws in the assassin's lofty goals of freedom and liberation. Throughout the game, Haytham never hesitates to point out to his son, Connor, that the idealistic mission of his faction has no basis in the real world, and as the American Revolution progresses, it becomes increasingly difficult to disagree with him. By the end of the game, Connor's fight for freedom forces his tribe to leave their ancestral lands, causes his childhood friend to die, and the Democratic Republic he aided in war ultimately refuses to give all of its people equal rights, to put it lightly. Haytham is long gone by then, but his snarky comments regarding the assassins are really hard to unhear. Number 3, N, Pokemon Black and White. Generally speaking, the villains in Pokemon are about as sensible as the idea of sending off all 10-year-olds on a coming-of-age journey across the world with nothing but turtles, cats and birds for protection. And yet there is one criminal organisation that doesn't try to end the world for its own sake. Not only that, their goals and ideals are so rational they give the good guys pause. Team Plasma from Pokemon Black and White is a group that seeks to liberate Pokemon from being kept in tiny balls and used for dogfights between oblivious 10-year-olds. We've all pointed out the core concepts of Pokemon have some rather messed up moral implications, and yet no one until Team Plasma bothered to point them out in the actual games themselves. Of all Team Plasma members, N, the leader, is probably the most notable for making you question if your fun Pokemon adventure is actually fun for everyone involved. Every time you meet him, he asks you something that makes you realise your Pokemon are not quite as free and happy as you might think. If you disagree, just think about how many Pokemon that you turned into HM slaves. Number 2, Letho The Witcher 2, Assassins of Kings. Although Witcher 2 isn't too popular with fans due to its awkward controls and outdated mechanics, many still praise it for its story, filled with political intrigue and secret plots. The game revolves around the conflict between the Lodge of the Sorceresses and the Northern Kingdom, which are under the constant threat of assassins trying to murder their kings, or rather one assassin, Letho. Letho is a Witcher from the Viper School who seeks to restore the former glory of his profession. He does so by assassinating the Northern monarchs in the Secret Service for the Emperor of Nilfgaard, who promises to give Letho and other Witchers a place to rebuild their disbanded schools. Letho's methods are questionable and he's obviously an absolutely brutal villain, but his goals and the clever way in which he utilises the chaos of the conflicts to his own benefit make it difficult to not take his side. During the whole story, Letho manages to trick everyone, playing with his powerful allies with pawns and using their own arrogance against them. In the end, no matter what choice you make, Letho is guaranteed to get something out of it. Honestly, you have to applaud this level of manipulation. And number 1, Pagan Min, Far Cry 4. The Far Cry series is famous for its gallery of memorable and deeply entertaining villains. Most of them manage to capture the player's hearts with their wits and charms, but Pagan Min, the main antagonist of Far Cry 4, has those and something extra. He's the only character in his game who makes any sense. In Far Cry 4, you play as Ajay, who joins up with the Golden Path rebels to liberate Kyrat from Pagan Min's regime. You spend the entire game aiding the Path's leaders, only to discover that as soon soon as Pagan is gone, they quickly replace him as dictator and oppress Karat with their own flavours of tyranny. Meanwhile, Pagan, Karat's tyrant, offers a far less bloody and pointless solution to his country's conflict, handing it over to Ajay. In the game's secret ending, Pagan reveals Ajay's mother was his lover, and Ajay's father, the original leader of the Golden Path, took her away from him. He wants Ajay to rule because he reminds him of his old flame, and also because his ties to the Golden Path would help Ajay secure his role without any further escalation of the civil war. Who knew that the insane guy would end up making the most sense? If you like video game villains, why not check out this video on screen now for 10 video games where you're secretly the villain. Don't forget to like this video and leave a comment down below on other video game villains that were right. Head over to WhatCulture.com for more content every day. I've been Sai for WhatCulture, and have a good week.